Hello, and welcome to Best Picture Brainrot, a podcast series where three friends attempt the impossible, watching every single Best Picture winner in chronological order before the 100th Oscars and slowly losing our grip on reality.
Follow along as we give ourselves cinematic brain damage by watching every Best Picture in order from the first winner, Wings, to whatever the Academy picks in 2028.
We are 98 weeks away from the 100th Oscars ceremony, and this week we will be talking about the third Best Picture winner, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Like Drew said, our third Academy Award winner for Best Picture is All Quiet on the Western Front, released August 4th, 1930, and directed by Louis Milestone. It follows the second company of the German army during the ending years of World War I, primarily through the eyes of soldier Paul Baumer, who is 19 years old at the beginning of the story. But he goes through the years, losing comrades, friends, and his sense of self throughout the war. I wanted to start off with a little bit of history on anti-war art. As long as there has been war, there has been, of course, anti-war sentiments. And this novel was written by Erich Maria Remarque, and while Remarque's novel was the first of this genre truly capturing the global zeitgeist, works against war had existed for thousands of years. One of the earliest known works of this nature was Aristophanes' Lysistrata, a story where women withhold sex in order to force men to stop fighting in the Peloponnesian War. This was in 411 BC. Other major anti-war works pre-All Quiet, they included works by philosophers like Desiderius Erasmus in the 16th century and satirist Jonathan Swift in the 18th century. By the late 1800s, there were some anti-war novels, but none of them felt so universal as All Quiet on the Western Front did, and that's simply because no war had ever felt so universal as World War I. This, in addition to the rapid intensification of war that was seen during this time, due to the unprecedented mechanization and the abandonment of the more gentlemanly wars of the past. So, all that to say that All Quiet walked so other titanic artistic works could run, ranging from Picasso's Guernica to the litany of World War II and Vietnam movies, which we will, of course, be covering on this pod. But we can't get anti-war without war, so Drew, tell us a little bit about World War I itself.
For a long time it was just referred to as the Great War.
So it's like a New Hope.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Of world wars.
Exactly.
And well, Star Wars wasn't called Star Wars. It wasn't like Star Wars 4.
Yeah, exactly. It was called Star Wars.
But now it is Star Wars 4, A New Hope.
Yeah.
Which it didn't have that name because no one thought there would be other Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just like people didn't think there would be other world wars.
Surely we won't do this twice. This is the last war ever, right? You all know the Franz Ferdinand, Gabriel Princip, etc., etc. Franz Ferdinand is assassinated by an act of terrorism by a Bosnian Serb nationalist in 1914, June 28th, and in the basically only really a couple months, even less than that, this web of alliances leads to what we now call the World War I, or the Great War at the time. Sarah might give a quick overview, but just so you have the actual facts, Austria declares war on Serbia, Russia mobilizes as an ally of Serbia, Germany as an ally of Austria mobilizes its own army against Russia, Germany also establishes an alliance with the Ottomans, meanwhile Germany also declares war on France by going through Belgium through the Schlieffen Plan, and then Great Britain then declares war on Germany in defense of Belgium. Along with Great Britain, it includes Canada, Australia, and New Zealand and its colonies, and along with France, its African colonies. Along with Germany, its African colonies. Even Japan, as an ally of Britain, is embroiled in this. One other thing I want to mention that is very important to this movie is that this is often referred to as the Writers' War. It is a war where a lot of famous writers, mostly men, from Europe and America found their voice, and notably Ernest Hemingway is probably the most famous. We also have Remarque, the author of All Quiet. Most of these writers are writing about a loss of innocence, a loss of heroism, a loss of belief in war is glorious. Another important author from this time, since this is a war of authors, is eventual Best Picture winner, The Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien is...
was he a soldier in this war?
I believe he was. I can't remember if he was just a soldier.
Did he start out writing about the war?
I am not at all a big Lord of the Rings head, so I don't know all of this. But from my understanding, like his whole good versus evil, etc., like all of that lore that you get from Lord of the Rings is kind of stemming from his experience in World War I. He's kind of an interesting case because he's not necessarily the most cynical compared to someone like Hemingway, who's talking about like, you know, losing your manhood in war and et cetera, you know.
Thanks, Drew. Very insightful. Sarah, for our listeners who may be having trouble following along with these musty old stories about world wars, can you brain rot it up for us?
Yes. So for those of you who zoned out maybe like a minute through that,
Like
I did. Yeah, so World War I was really toxic. Franz Ferdinand of Austria, so he gets shot by a Serbian guy. So Austria starts crashing out, and Serbia's like, it's not that serious. And then Germany's like, well, Austria's ride or die. And then Russia's like, well, don't talk to Serbia like that or catch me outside. And then France is like, Russia is my bestie. Also, we aren't healed from the Franco-Prussian War, so this like feels kind of personal. And then Germany's like, just Venmo'd Austria for like war expenses, just like in case of emergency. And then Russia starts going to the gym and everyone's like, why is Russia bulking right now? And then Austria's like, oh my God, just got paid. I'm going to go spend it. And so Austria pulls up on Serbia. So like they're scrapping it out on the blacktop. And then Germany's like, uh-oh, Austria just spent our emergency fund. So we got to go before Russia and France pull up. But then Google Maps takes Germany through Belgium to get to France. And then Britain pulls up and they're like, get off my lawn. And then the Ottoman Empire is watching the group chat for a few months. They're like, this is weird, but I think I'm going to join. And then Germany's like, come sit with us. Like, we have resources. And Ottoman Empire's like, okay, bet. And then instead of everyone being like, okay, let's chill, everyone just keeps doubling down. And, like, no one wants to look weak. And it's, like, all their egos. You know, they're just, like, it's just, like, so dramatic. No one wants to back out. And then suddenly that's, like, 4 years of, like, how did we get here? And then everyone's just exhausted and traumatized. And they're like, yeah, that wasn't worth it.
So where did the U.S. come in?
Oh, I don't really think about that. This movie's about German soldiers, so, but very much like an American to make it all about you.
Woodrow Wilson is sitting there saying, y'all are messy.
Hopefully that cleared some things up.
I now feel so much more lost than I did 45 seconds ago.
You somehow made World War I more confusing.
How was that confusing?
No, that was actually
I'm
very
kidding.
good.
I'm kidding.
That was good. It's a wonderful background on the history of these players in the war. What about the players of the movie?
Great transition. Okay, yeah. So just like starting off broadly with production, it was pretty cool how they shot this film. They used 2 cameras at the same time, side by side. One version was edited as the standard sound film, and the other was made as an international sound version, so it could be shown in non-English speaking countries, which was pretty forward thinking for 1930. Obviously, getting banned in Germany. Yup.
Yeah, interesting anecdote there. I mean, of course, like around this time, Nazis are coming to power. Hitler banned this movie and the book, of course, because it painted the Germans, and I wouldn't say it painted them in a negative light, but if you are a jingoistic kind of dictator in the way that he was, I can see the rationale for thinking, oh, this is painting Germany, this is painting my people as looking like very weak. So that's why he banned it.
Well, it also, too, is like by the end of the movie, he's taking a stab against patriotism in general, specifically German patriotism.
True. Throughout the whole movie and really throughout the whole book as well, very, very pointed on that.
But yeah, so production shot on 2 cameras side by side. A really cool detail is that there were a lot of German army veterans that were living in Los Angeles at the time, so the production brought a ton of them in. They worked as extras and technical advisors to make everything feel more authentic, kind of like Wings. They used around 2,000 extras, which is a lot, and one of them was actually Fred Zinnemann, who would later become a major director, winning 4 Oscars, mostly for Best Picture or Best Director, but one for Best Picture in the 1967 film A Man for All Seasons. There's also that really famous scene where Paul gets shot while reaching for a butterfly. That moment actually isn't in the original book. It was created for the film. It ties back to an earlier scene where you see a butterfly collection in Paul's home, which adds a layer of symbolism. Ooh. And kind of funny behind the scenes detail, they filmed that shot later during editing, so the actor who plays Paul wasn't available, so the director, Lewis Milestone, used his own hand in the shot instead.
I knew I didn't recognize that hand.
I know.
That's not his hand.
That's not Paul. Hand cameo. Okay. And then there's this casting story that feels very Hollywood. Za-Sue Pitts, who was a well-known comedic actress at the time, originally played Paul's mother, filmed all of her scenes, but when they showed the film to preview audiences, people actually laughed when she appeared because they just associated her.
That's so sad.
They laughed when she appeared because they associated her so strongly with comedy. So Milestone ended up reshooting all of her scenes with a different actress, Beryl Mercer, before the final release. The only people who ever saw Pitts in the role were those early preview audiences, but she does briefly show up in like the original trailer for 30 seconds.
Just imagining test audiences just erupting in laughter.
Yeah.
When your face
Woman.
pops up on screen.
Exactly.
Humiliating. Sorry, girl. Okay. So I'll get into the crew and the cast. I was a little disappointed because there's not like as much gossip or tea about these people. So like, sorry.
They're all pretty young.
They're all pretty
I
young,
assume.
all kind of unknown actors,
Yeah.
relatively unknown actors at the time of filming. So
Which works for the
For this
movie
film.
artistically.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it works pretty poorly for a podcast that takes place 98 years later.
Exactly. For someone who likes celebrity gossip, I'm like, okay. Okay, no, but actually, these people do have really interesting stories. So the director, Lewis Milestone, he had a very interesting background. He was raised in Odessa in Ukraine, and then he was educated in Belgium and Berlin, where he studied engineering. A lot of these people studied engineering, actually, I found out, like cast and crew. He was fluent in German and Russian and was apparently a huge reader. So he got into theater pretty early, starting out doing prop work, background acting, and then in 1914, he moved to the U.S. with literally $6 in his pocket. And then in 1917, he joined the U.S. Army Signal Corps, where he made educational short films for troops during World War I. He had actually emigrated to avoid being drafted into the Russian army, but then immediately enlisted in the U.S. Army and ended up being sent to France anyway. Womp womp. After the war, he became an American citizen and headed to Hollywood, where he met director William A. Sighter. Sighter brought him on as an assistant cutter, and from there, Milestone really climbed the ladder: editor, assistant director, screenwriter, then basically learning every single part of the filmmaking process in the early 1920s. And that experience ended up shaping his directing style a lot. So he directed his first film, Seven Sinners, in 1925 for Howard Hughes. Then just a couple years later, he won his first Oscar for Two Arabian Nights in 1927, which that award has a really kind of a weird place in history because it was the award for Best Comedy Director, which that was the only movie that ever won it because it didn't exist after that.
Wings wasn't even up for direction that year. That was the first Academy Awards. That was Wings' year. But if Wings had competed, it wouldn't have been in comedy.
Stylistically, Milestone was kind of a pioneer. He used moving cameras on wooden tracks, which made his films feel more fluid and realistic instead of stiff and static, shout out Broadway melody. So that was a big deal at the time.
Shady.
Honestly, they're catching strays for me for the rest of the podcast. Personality-wise, he had a reputation for being difficult. He clashed with people in Hollywood, Howard Hughes, Warner Bros., a lot of studio execs over creative control. But despite that, he was consistently working across major studios, just usually not tied down to long-term contracts. There's also this great story from All Quiet. The producer, Carl Laemmle Jr., wanted a happy ending, and Milestone basically joked, "I've got your happy ending. We'll let the Germans win the war."
I visited his gravesite this weekend. He's in a little crypt. It's very understated. I only knew it just because it was on Google Maps. We were there just because we had family in town who love going to cemeteries. Los Angeles, a lot of famous people in cemeteries, so...
Did you leave, like, flowers?
For Lewis.
Yeah, for Lewis.
Yeah.
No, but I did do TikTok dances in front of his crib.
Perfect.
Just because he needed to
I'm
see
a
him.
savage. Classic.
I love those videos so much. Like, dancing in front of LBJ's grave because he would have loved that. Like,
oh, fun.
just a great social media thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything on the actors?
Yes, I'm getting into that now. How do you say his name? Lou Ayres?
I don't know. Lou
Ayres. Put your hand in the Ayres. Sorry. Okay. Lou Ayres.
With deep respect to his family.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Lou Ayres. He plays Paul Baumer. A student and writer, he's the leader of all the boys in this film. So Ayres, he was born in Minneapolis. He started out as a musician. He played lots of different instruments. He was discovered at a nightclub in LA and landed a role opposite Greta Garbo. But All Quiet was his breakout film. It changed everything for him. And what's interesting is that the anti-war message of this film stuck with him. It didn't just launch his career. It actually shaped his belief, because when World War II came around, Ayres declared himself a conscientious objector. This was a huge deal at the time. A lot of people were pissed off about it. Major Hollywood star refusing to fight in the war, and it really hurt his reputation. But his objection wasn't about avoiding service entirely. He wanted to serve as a medic, not in combat. At first, the military classified him as a full objector, but then adjusted his status so he could serve in a non-combat role. So in 1942, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, served in the medical corps. He started out as a first aid instructor, and then actually requested a demotion so he could go overseas and work more directly as a medic and chaplain's assistant. Yeah, overall, kind of fascinating. This is his biggest role. His biggest role is an anti-war film, directly influenced him to take real-life stands during World War II. That completely changed how Hollywood and the public saw him. Next, we have Louis Wilhelm as Corporal Stanislaus.
A.K.A. Cat.
A.K.A. Cat.
Kaczynski.
Kaczynski. He's an older soldier who's also a cobbler. He was born in New York and was, interestingly, super academic. He went to Cornell. He got a degree in engineering. That's second engineering degree.
Wow.
And even stayed on to teach math there for several years. He also worked as a mining engineer, so acting really wasn't his original path at all. But during World War I, he did join the U.S. Army. He was an officer in training at Camp Zachary Taylor in Kentucky when the war ended in 1918. And similar to the tone of All Quiet, he didn't want to stay in the military long term. So once the war ended, he requested a discharge and left the service. Then he transitioned fully into acting starting in the 1910s, quickly became known for his very distinct look, especially his broken nose, which he got from a football injury in college. Because of that, he was always cast as like tough, rough characters, soldiers, criminals, authoritarian figures, but often with some underlying humanity. By the late 1920s and into 1930, he was doing both silent films, early talkies, including this movie, which ended up being one of his most iconic roles.
That would be the premier role that you would expect to see like a big star in. Like the rest of them are unknowns, but like that is who you'd get for like a Oscar hopeful turn. It was a great role, great character.
I loved that character. But yeah, Louis Wilhelm is buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood, California. Specifically, he is located at the Chapel Columbarium, first floor, column D, tier 2, niche 5.
Final resting place reveal, as per usual.
So before we start, this weekend I engaged with All Quiet on the Western Front in a way that is pretty, I would say, unparalleled. Read the book, the novel, which is pretty short. I watched this 1930s movie, and then I watched the 2022 remake while also visiting the grave of the director.
He also played the iOS app game as well.
I did the All Quiet challenge.
Yeah,
too.
All Quiet.
The book and the movie are very similar. A lot of things that happen in the book are ported into the 1930s movie, maybe out of order. It does play around a lot with what comes when chronologically, but a lot of things are lifted directly from the page and onto the screen, like full-on conversations. Really good one. So they did a great job of adapting. This is the first ever adapted movie to win Best Picture so far. I mean, we've only talked about 3 of them. those will obviously become far more popular.
Long overdue, I'll say.
Yeah, people were clamoring. Like, all these original scripts. But the first adapted one, I would argue it's a very, very good adaptation of the book. I'll cover more my thoughts on kind of those main differences later on, and why I have such an axe to grind against the 2022 version, which I think does a horrible job of adapting the story, barely even attempting to adapt this as a story.
Did you also watch the there's a one
there is a 1979 one with Ernest Borgnine and Ian Holm. I unfortunately found out about it about an hour before we started recording, so I was unable to commit fully to the bit, but I'll take the visiting the grave as a feather in my cap.
Okay.
But the movie starts with the students pre-becoming soldiers. They're in the classroom. They are getting this speech from their teacher, essentially using mass propaganda to get them to join the war, to become soldiers. And of course, the main theme of this is about that loss of innocence. So it's a very predatory scene, used to great effect. After the teacher is done, all the kids they're ready to run through a brick wall for the fatherland, for Germany, just for this idea of becoming soldiers, because we didn't know what it meant at that point. So great scene, really sets up a lot of themes.
Opening is awesome, I think. There's like really interesting, I don't know how, if we want to get into it yet, but there's really, what I found so cool was the way they play with like depth of field in those
with the
first
window
scenes.
And the
yeah.
I noticed that too. I thought that was really cool.
I was like,
and
you can see the whole classroom, the teacher, the window, outside you can see deep down the streets. Like, it's really like at a technical level, I thought that was like just very,
they'd advanced a lot since the other ones that we'd seen. I mean, Wings looked great. I think there are limitations, of course, by like the type of film and cameras that they had at the time, and you can see how quickly things were advancing even back then. But Broadway Melody barely tried to do anything interesting camera-wise, so it was refreshing.
Opening is very good, though. Had me hooked. That whole speech, you're both a little bit buying into it, but also you can feel the sliminess of it.
After that, all these kids are like, yes, I am so in. I'm ready to be a soldier. I'm going to join. And they do. They all go. It's cutting to them in the barracks. And their sergeant is, interestingly enough, someone they kind of foreshadow in the scene before at the very beginning. He's the mailman.
Yeah.
His name is Himmelstoss, and he's like this short dude. And in the book, too, he's got this crazy short man Napoleon complex.
He's chopped. Yeah, like that mustache was like embarrassing.
So, Sarah, you would say that he's chopped, but maybe he had Riz.
No, he was not charming at all.
No, he actually is a villain.
Everything about him repulsed me.
He is essentially a villain of the story because he is, again, going back to the short man, this Napoleon syndrome, he uses that to take it out by being very domineering to these young boys who are now under his command, which again is punctuated by the fact that he is this small man, male person, mailman, like not a very high status kind of job. And I have a passage from the book that I think is really interesting, specifically about Himmelstoss. And this is something that Kat says to these new recruits. It says, if you train a dog to eat potatoes and then afterwards put a piece of meat in front of him, he'll snap at it. It's his nature. And if you give a man a little bit of authority, he behaves just the same way. He snaps at it too. These things are precisely the same. In himself, man is essentially a beast, only he butters it over like a slice of bread with a little decorum. The army is based on that. One man must always have power over the other.
Ooh, she ate with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. This good movie was based on a well-written novel. Who would have thought? But no, there's a ton of really good passages like that, and I think that's a very poignant one about Himmelstoss. But the recruits really hate this guy. He's making him do all this stuff that doesn't really matter egregiously abusing his power.
He is the fraternity sophomore who got hazed a little too hard the semester before, and now he takes it out on all the new pledges.
But like, he's not good enough to be like in leadership or anything.
Exactly. He's not like a grand master of ceremonies. He had to like do one too many push-ups on bottle caps or whatever, and now he's got to do it to all the other kids.
It's just basically like any middle management person, you think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Promoted to director.
I mean, the drill sergeant trope is one that would endure throughout the rest of like cinematic artistic history, and I think it's just a true thing that obviously happens, but we will see many of these villain characters in movies that we watch later on. The kids, they hate him, and they, at one point, this is directly from the book, it's a bit of a weird scene. I don't know if it needed to be in the movie, but they like jump him and spank him.
Yes. And they throw him in the mud.
Yeah. And that's it. That they just do that.
Yeah, I wish there was like some sort of follow-up or closure from that.
Is that like a hate crime against mailmen? Like it felt.
Yeah, wait, can we give like a shout out to our postal workers?
This is anti-unk crime.
Yeah, we on Best Picture Brain Rot, we stand with UPS.
100%. And FedEx.
The next is they get to their first real battle area. This is where they meet Kat, a.k.a. Kaczynski, a.k.a. Stanislaus Kaczynski. He's like an older soldier, whereas most of these recruits are straight out of school. They're 18, 19, in that kind of range. Kat himself is more in the 40s in the book, and I think that's generally reflected in the movie. Interesting fact I learned from my mother-in-law, who's a history teacher. Given like the age of Kat, he would have very likely... The last great conflict that Germany was involved in was the Franco-Prussian War, which was in 1870s. If Kat would have been around the 40s by the time World War I comes around, he would have obviously been too young to participate in that war. So it's very likely that he was a mercenary. And before, because he's a cobbler, as you mentioned, but he's portrayed as being kind of battle-hardened and someone who has seen a lot of combat.
Yeah.
At the time, a German, there may have been some minor skirmishes. Potentially that could be what he's coded as, but I like to subscribe to this idea, which again was given to me by my mother-in-law, but that he was a mercenary going out and fighting battles for other countries, which is why he has this like grizzled look about him, this feel, and why he is able to command all of these.
That's good lore.
You're talking about Kat, right?
Yeah, about Kat.
Yeah. He's kind of like Jack Black in School of Rock.
Okay, keep going.
I don't know, he just can like lead all the kids to...
That was actually a better metaphor than I thought it was going to be. I see it now.
And, you know, they don't mention this in School of Rock, but Jack Black's character was also a mercenary.
This is true.
Before he became
Look it up.
He was with Blackwater.
Yeah. He was a prison guard at Abu Ghraib.
That's how we met Mike White.
Yeah.
That's how we met Ned Schneebly. Smuggled him out of Abu Ghraib.
We go all the way back to Mosul.
I don't know. That was just the cut I watched. So I don't know if that's the real one. But there's a great scene introducing Kat where he steals a pig from the French lines where they're like unloading a train full of meat, and the people who are getting this meat, they filled their wheelbarrow and they're on their way. But then he goes up after they've walked away to the door and he's like, oh, you know, I'll take this one. And he takes it and he just waddles back to camp with it. You know, and that's like what feeds the troops. So instant respect.
The fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
The next scene is the first great battle scene. So this is the French forces advancing on the Trent. It's a really great and a brutal battle scene. There's, again, this is a pre-code movie. So there was a lot more tolerance for things like straight up death, dismemberment. There's a great part where a French soldier grabs onto the barbed wire and there's an explosion behind him and you're just seeing his hands and like cut off at the wrist and they're just holding on to it's a very quick flash, but it's very brutal and not the kind of thing you would expect to see in any movie that's from the 1930s.
It's funny. It's over like a brief second, but it looks like all of us noticed that. Like,
that is lifted also directly from the book, described in exactly the same way.
Wow.
That must have been really disturbing for 1930s audiences to see
Yeah.
violence like that. For us, we're even like, whoa.
I think there was pushback on it at the time, but they argued it was an important content.
I don't know what movie today would disturb us so much.
Well, it's hard to disturb us anymore. I mean, just like with
Climax, maybe.
They tried to do Lars von Trier in general, just as a person.
Nymphomaniac or Antichrist.
True. I mean, you really got to push the boundaries to do that today, because we're all...
We're all cooked.
So, after this huge battle, then it's cut to, they're outside the battle, they're back at the barracks, they're off war. They have a great scene where they're all in line to get rations, and the cook is saying, I have enough food here for 150 men, and you are only 80. So I can't give you all of this food because that's way too much food. And Kat, being leader of the second company, is like, well, you are to give food to the second company. We are the second company. And of course, the difference between the 150 that he cooked for and the 80 that are there are people who have died.
Yeah.
And he kind of bargains with them to get like essentially double rations for everyone. So in a way, it's like a small win.
Yeah.
Highlighting that horrific angle of war. That is what the book opens with, that scene.
Oh.
So again, I mentioned they kind of like, they chopped and screwed the book.
Wow.
They give it the Houston treatment.
What's the Houston treatment?
Got UGK.
What's that
UGK
mean?
in the director's seat.
Yeah. It's like
it's like Southern rap.
Oh, UGK. With that one song.
Yeah, like not that one, but yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they cut up the storyline and put it in different ways. So when I saw that scene, I was like, oh, that was the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
But I do like that scene. The next scene is they visit their friend in the infirmary, and he's dying.
Franz.
Yeah, he's dying pretty bad, and he has these really nice boots. And to add to this, one of his legs has been amputated. So logic would dictate that those boots are up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean,
these boots
at
are
least one of them. At least one of them.
Well, Franz is nice. And he lets them have his boots.
Franz is nice. He's also
dying. He dies
lucid.
immediately after.
Yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily like sane at that moment.
Well, but it's a great and kind of haunting line in a way where it's someone takes the boots and it's like, well, either I take them or they end up in the hands of some orderly. So I may as well take them because they're going to get actual use. And it just shows again like the depersonalization that comes with being in this setting. You become so utilitarian in the way that it's like these personal affects, like it doesn't matter. Like you have to think of yourself.
I want to point out two things. One, there's a very interesting, very fun scene, not fun, but like a cool scene right after where they're just showing the boots like pretty quickly getting like degraded, like almost immediately.
It's like a whole tracking sequence where it's just kind of following the story of the boots for the next owner who dies very quickly.
Yeah. But just from a history perspective here, a lot of these soldiers and the people fighting aren't necessarily fighting for much pay. This is not like the same sort of established military structures that we have now, where it's like there are payment plans in place, and people might join the military to gain some sort of economic foothold later in life. If you look at accounts from soldiers during the time, the number one thing that they recall is like what they were ultimately fighting for, not even like for country or for their nation or anything like that, is rations. Whether that's, the things that they would, maybe it's a pair of boots. That's like the best thing that they take away from the war from a material perspective. This is a little bit aside, but the most common one that you hear is alcohol. Most of them are just fighting for free alcohol. It's like they can get the free alcohol, they can get the food, but like that is the thing that like most of these men, especially British soldiers report is like.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Those Brits.
And you see this actually in the movie, like with how alcohol is prevalent in it, I think.
Yeah.
They actually do a pretty good job at showing that.
I will say I really appreciated the boots visual storytelling. I feel like we haven't seen something like that, like a consistent visual.
Yeah, it was a cool scene.
It was cool, and like they kept
inspired direction.
Yes, agreed.
It's like good storytelling. Like it just like it's very effective.
Yeah.
While also looking good.
And I also just kept thinking of like Puss in Boots, and I'm like, this is the Boots now. Feel old yet?
When did Puss in Boots take place? Was that during the Franco-Prussian War?
It could have been.
He was in the Spanish Civil War.
True.
He was actually there at Guernica.
Brotherhood of the Traveling
Guernica was
Boots.
1937. It's way after this.
Exactly.
No, but we should find movies where it's just those boots, because Puss in Boots boots look like that.
No.
But
and that's on God.
And that's on God, and that's on Puss in Boots, and that's on the swamp. We in the swamp.
Speaking of Shrek-like characters, Himmelstas then shows back up in the trenches.
You thought you saw the last of Himmelstas.
Drew, if we could get another like fraternity metaphor for this.
Okay, so that sophomore got put on leave. Like the interfraternity council basically said, like, "Yo, you can't be having this guy in the house."
Like the governor's son was put into the frat and he hazed him too hard.
Yeah. So he's like, they're like, "Yo, you gotta just like chill for like 6 months, but like we promise you can come back for formal. We promise you're not gonna miss out on that."
But it's a great scene because he comes into the trenches where they are and he's trying to assert his authority over them, and they're just like, nah, man, like you have no power over us. Like they're just like, he's just like, everyone, like, I walked in the room, like, stand up, click your heels, get to attention. Yeah. They're like, absolutely not.
Like, imagine being in the trenches today and someone's doing that to you. It's like,
yeah,
dude, like, leave me alone. Like,
right.
I'm in the trenches. Like, you're not
literally in the trenches.
Exactly.
I got expense reports due tomorrow.
Literally. And imagine someone like him, like chopped ass, mustache, like walking in. Like, that's not what you want to see when you're in the trenches.
I mean, it does point out a pretty interesting like dynamic between those who see the front line and those who don't. It's like something you see all the time in military movies, but this is a pretty good example of that, where I hesitate to think of a similar example where you see someone actually from behind the lines come to the front lines and sort of get like a talking to from his own underlings, you know,
yeah,
which is kind of
like, you have no power here.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was pretty cool.
The next scene is very iconic for all of the all quiet heads in the chat, but it's a very important scene.
Those of us who have read the book,
went to the
cemetery,
played the mobile game,
married someone whose in-laws were history professors so that he could bring them over.
True. I've been plotting this.
Part of your master plan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, my plans run deep. But Paul is in a battle and he gets stuck in a kind of an artillery shell hole with a French soldier. You can tell he's French because he doesn't have the cool point on his helmet. Yeah. Which, fun fact, I learned what that was for.
I learned what that was for.
It's because
it looked cool. That was really,
it looked silly to me.
So you could like headbutt people. But no, if someone would come at you with a sword coming from the top, if you have the point, it deflects it.
That's true. You do see that in a lot of other cultures too, with certain helmet designs. That is, I completely forgot about that. But yeah,
bring it back.
Yeah, but he ends up again in this artillery shell hole with another enemy soldier, and he, for the first time, has to, in a very personal way, he has to kill this man. And it is such a harrowing scene in the book because it really draws it out over really the course of a full chapter, where he stabs him and he kind of refuses to die. So it talks all about like his gurgling and like he's trying to keep him quiet because he doesn't want to be found. He's also kind of playing dead at this point. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just a very up close and personal death that he has to do himself. And it's kind of one of those, it's one of the story elements where someone, you know, really takes a turn. Yeah. You know, there's no going back from the fact that you killed this man in, I don't think in cold blood is necessarily fair, but it's crossing the Rubicon in a way for someone who has never killed someone before. I assume as someone
it's a
who's
little
never
outside the usual like rules and regulations of warfare too. It's like it's just you two. It's like there's no facade. It's like you just gotta kill him because you gotta, you know.
Totally. It's a very harrowing scene, and one that you'll see in like really any retelling of All Quiet on the Western Front. The next scene is a little flightier. I like it. It's a scene where the soldiers, they're stationed outside, I assume, some sort of French village. They're bathing in the river, and they see some, say, village farm girls who are French across the river. And they're trying to get their attention. Of course, like, they're not around women throughout this whole time. So they're thirsty as hell, right?
Down bad.
They're down horrendous.
They're in the trenches. Yes. No matter where they turn, the trenches will follow.
Oh, no.
But yeah, they're down horrendous, and they see these three baddies, and they're like...
Were they baddies, though?
And everyone's a baddie when you're...
Yeah, when you've only seen dudes for that long, it's like...
They were implied baddies, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, these baddies, the soldiers, they try to get their attention. The women are not interested until the soldiers are like, food! Yeah. Food! We have food!
Wait, did he pull it up from the river? I was so confused. Where'd he get the food from? He pulled it out from the bottom of the river.
Well, it was weird because he had like a loaf of bread and I think a sausage, which I was like...
Yeah, I don't know why they had them. I mean, it was probably just like a midday snack, but you don't take that stuff into the river.
But he like went underwater, grabbed the food and came back out, right? Or did I see that?
Well, when they were... So in the book, when they swim, they have only really their boots with them. So I think they kept the food in their boots, which is actually really gross now that
disgusting.
I think about it.
Yeah.
Regardless, that is a continuity error, and Lewis Milestone should be taken to task for including that in the film.
100%.
But the women are like, food, great, come over. One of their superior officers sees them, and he's like, back on the other side of the river, boys. They're like, we'll come back. We'll be back at night. So they do. They come back. They swim over naked, just in their boots, to this girl's farm. Which was very interesting that it was just like a farmhouse with three women. But again, like a lot of these peasants were probably in the war. They're probably fighting. Yeah. Like, sorry, I stabbed your husband already.
Well, I think they even have a male overcoat or whatever in there that one of the guys borrows.
Yes, yeah, because the boys are naked when they show up, and the girls, they see them, giggle, and then they throw clothes out at them for them to get into. Mm-hmm. They fade to black. Yeah. As they say. And that's on God, to be
Why
fair.
didn't she make...
This is
why
when we
didn't
start
she...
getting a little pre-code on them.
No. We need Sarah J. Maas to make a smut version of All Quiet on the Western Front.
God.
Real loud. We'll workshop that. It's actually somewhat of a poignant scene where... After Paul has slept with this girl, they're only showing like the silhouette of the bed in shadow and having the conversation over that. Mm-hmm. But he's just like, I will probably never see you again. She speaks French, he speaks German, which we haven't tackled this yet.
I know.
They all just have like American accents the whole time. Like they didn't even try. Which honestly I'm fine with.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
But it confused me at first because I was like, is this about an American army?
It is a little weird, but that it ultimately was like, okay, it's better than them trying to do bad German accents.
It's a staple of any movie.
Well, they did sing one German song in a bar. They tried, and you could tell all the actors were like, it was awkward. They're like, we don't know what we're saying right now.
Yeah. So this little scene with the girls, a bit of a throwaway scene, but I think it highlights a few things about the history of the times and what soldiers did.
Every war movie has that one scene where he hooks up with a local, and it's like the highlight of his experience.
Yeah. And his mom even warns him later, look out for French women.
Yeah.
Which is the next scene. There's an intermediate scene where Paul is injured and he gets sent to infirmary. There's some antics that go on in there. They're more expanded in the book. This it's more of a means to an end of getting him leave. And the leave scene is one of my favorite. It's my favorite scene and chapter in the book. And I think it's very key to the entire telling of the story. They do a great job of it in the movie as well, where he returns home again, on administrative/medical leave. So this is his chance to see his family, see his sister, mother, father, friends, just his community. And what's so heartbreaking about this scene, both of course in the book and the movie, is just his inability to be able to relate to what is going on back on the homestead. Like, they are so damaged by what they have seen, what they have experienced, who they had become, that loss of innocence that Drew has spoken about, where going home, it's just, there's kind of two edges of it. I don't think it's fair necessarily to say like feminine versus masculine, but they do demonstrate it through like mother and father.
True.
Where the mother can hardly bear in a way to like look at him and really challenge to relate to him, because I don't know if scared is the right term, but just he's changed so much from the young boy, right, who left. And then the father, he wants him to stay in his soldier's uniform. He wants him to go out to the bar and tell war stories to his friends, because he's trying to clout chase, right, with the fellow unks.
Thank you for the translation. That was really good.
That's good, Adam.
But I think it does maybe take away from the fact that it's a very good scene where it's just so uncomfortable, where I love it in the movie because one of like these older dudes is telling him like, you don't know anything about the war. If you guys get in this formation and you smash through the French troop, the front lines, like you're going to win this war immediately. I don't know why anyone's doing that. Like, you're going to do that, right? And it's just like, dude, I'm one soldier. I'm one guy. I have no power. And also, it is nothing at all like you think it is. And it highlights the difference and the disconnect between what's happening at home and the actual front lines.
It's like those guys who watch football and they're just like yelling at the TV. It's like, you do a QB stink, it's obvious what you do. It's like the most out of shape, like never actually played football in his life kind of guy.
Yeah. I want to talk about like the younger generation, because there's an amazing scene talked about at the beginning. There's a callback to that first scene where the teacher is speaking to the classroom. He's doing that again, but to the next generation, the next like youngest class to come through. He's radicalizing them in a way to join the war as he did before. But now we've seen the war through Paul's eyes. Paul shows up into the classroom and he's like, talk to these kids, tell them about how great the war is, how fulfilling it is. And I like how they had these new kids look really young. Like they looked way younger than like they did in the first scene. I think that's to make a point.
I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if it's just like the way the story tells itself. It like makes you think that. I noticed that too. I was like, geez, these look like children.
Yeah, and I think that you can see it through, this is like Paul's eyes seeing them as much younger, potentially. You could also think of it as the German troops were maybe running low on forces, so they had to dig even deeper into like the people that they were trying to get into the war. But Paul is having none of this. He basically tells them like, nah man, this sucks. It's horrible out there. You do not want to be a part of this. Like, he's wrong. The teacher is totally wrong to be telling you this. And really the worst part of it all is the kids are like, traitor, like, how dare you? Like, they're incensed to hear that his telling of it, despite, again, being the only person who they've maybe talked to who has actually been on the front lines, is, like, illegitimate. Yeah. Great scene. Surprisingly, one that was not in the book. But I'm very glad that they included this into the movie. I would say it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie overall, because it just thematically ties things in a way so beautifully. But after that, Paul returned to the field. We're nearly done. This is kind of the falling action overall of the movie, where he returns to the field and he reunites with Kat. Basically everyone else, every other character who has been relevant throughout the entire movie is dead. It's really just now, of the people who we've started with and grown to know, it's just Paul and Kat remaining. And then they're on the battlefield. They're in the middle of having a conversation, and a mortar comes. Again, this is a very common thing, of course, that happens. When a mortar falls pretty near them, And they're laying on the ground because they, fell down to try and avoid it. And Kat's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to walk back. And he says, it got my shin. Like, it blew up his ankle, essentially. So Paul is like, this is actually something that you would probably be able to generally recover from, is the implication there. But he can't walk back to camp. So he's like, okay, I'm going to put you on my shoulders. We're going to walk you back. He talks to him as they get to camp. And again, this is another thing that's very common to any retelling of All Quiet on the Western Front, very key to the story. He drops him off onto a medical bed and he, gets some water because he's carrying this large man for a long time. And the medic's like, you didn't need to do that. He's dead. Which is kind of a gut punch. In the movie, it does foreshadow this by showing that he has a head wound.
Yeah.
In the book, I think it's a lot more affecting because you kind of learn with Paul that he has died, and then he examines the back of the head and finds there's a little piece of shrapnel that lodged in there.
Nice.
And so it's a very sad scene because there's just no one left for him.
That would be like if Jack Black died in School of Rock.
But all the kids had died too. There was one kid. There was just Miranda Cosgrove. Miranda Cosgrove carrying Jack Black's body.
It was funny when I'm watching this scene too. With the mortars or whatever. It was funny that my first thought was I'm watching. They have a brief shot. They're out there in the field. And they have a brief shot of a plane. The plane that's going to drop these mortars. I see this plane. And I go, from Wings. I was like,
that's Jack.
I was like,
Jack, no, don't do it again.
That planes exist in things other than that one movie.
No, it's the World War One-iverse.
Yeah. There you go.
WWICU.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shit.
But that really leads into the final scene, which is what Sarah mentioned earlier, where Paul is in a trench. He's just got a gun trained out there. He sees a butterfly kind of out through the peephole, and he reaches for it, and another sniper is able to pick him off through there, and his hand falls limp. That is essentially the end of the movie. I do want to read the last 2 paragraphs of the novel because they're very beautiful, and it really helps tie it together as well. He fell in October 1918 on a day that was so quiet and still on the whole front that the Army report confined itself to a single sentence: all quiet on the Western Front. He had fallen forward and lay on the earth as though sleeping. Turning him over, one saw that he could not have suffered long. His face had an expression of calm, as though almost glad the end had come. Again, this is a very well-written novel. I think it's very beautiful. I wanted to very briefly talk about the differences between the stories, them being this book, the 1930 adaptation, and the 2022 adaptation. As I mentioned, I think the book and the 1930s adaptation pair really well together. They took a lot of really strong dialogue from the book and put it right into the movie. What little they added, which was Paul coming back to the school. In the book, he does interact with the professor when he's on leave, but it's more of in a direct way where it's more just one-on-one. But expanding it to him actually talking to the classroom, I think, was very smart. But other than that, other than, as I've said, the chopped and screwed version of the novel is what the movie is, it is very faithful. And I think interprets it in a very beautiful way. I think it's a really strong interpretation of the book. A few things that were left out of the movie from the novel. There's a scene early on where they raid a farmhouse, steal a goose. It's an early camaraderie building sort of
That's in
scene.
the new movie, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, they butcher it so badly. I hate it. But again, just because it doesn't serve what it needs to serve in the book. There is another minor scene, comes sort of near the end of the book, that is in no adaptation that I've seen. Obviously don't know about 1979, but all of them are in either the barracks or the infirmary or something like that. One of the soldiers' wives comes to visit with a baby,
Oh.
He wants to have, a conjugal visit with his wife, and all like the guys in the barracks are like, bet, we got your back, brother. One of them holds the baby, the others watch the door. What? And, this soldier and his wife, they do the deed, and it's pretty quick. Yeah. And then they all call her like mother after the fact. Just kind of weird. It's honestly a better scene than how I'm describing it. Like, it works in the context of the story. I think it's, it's like doing what you have to do, that camaraderie, and like the desperate things that we'll do just to feel that even small ounce of human connection. However, with the 2022 adaptation, what I would say about it, and I actually watched it this morning because I did not care for it when I first watched it, and I hadn't read the book by then, but I had read the Wikipedia summary of the book. And I knew, just because, again, with my mother-in-law being a huge fan of this book, I was familiar a little with the story, and having read that, like, understanding, like, the director, Edward Berger, completely missed the point of what the story was about. It is, of course, showing the horror of war through very explicit means, but it's kind of also making it, I don't want to say making it seem badass, but just leaning into almost like a Zack Snyder-ification of like, this is so cool and dark and moody.
Yeah.
Kaczynski, no.
Like, it's not that far.
I don't get it.
Well, you'll learn one day, because Justice League did famously win.
Please. There's no movie named Justice League, whatever. I've never seen that, and I know that's never won
Zack Snyder's Justice League. Well, it won my Academy Awards that year, and that's ultimately what we'll transition to about halfway through.
Adam's
my
Best
Academy
Picture.
Awards, yeah.
I will say I agree, though, about the new version. It was like blood and gore, but it didn't feel as nearly as personal as
the subtlety of the story reflected in the novel in the 1930 adaptation is the greatest strength of All Quiet on the Western Front. I think Edward Berger made a generic World War I movie.
Yes.
All power to him, and I think if it was just generic World War I movie, then I would look on it a lot more kindly. It's still, in my opinion, a little bit empty.
Agreed.
As far as like what are you saying? Like, what are your themes? I don't think it was very clear. Whereas these themes in this adaptation are incredibly clear, and it doesn't even have, in this, watching it again, I was like, I don't remember it, but it had to have happened, right? There's no scene where he goes on leave, and him going on leave is, I would argue, an incredibly pivotal part of this story and being able to tell it effectively. So stripping it out, you're not even making All Quiet on the Western Front. You're just making the things that they kept in 2022 are he meets a guy named Kaczynski, who's his mentor, and he dies and he carries him. And there is a few other like lip servicey type things, of course, but it's really just picking out the things that were more cool, war-coded, instead of making it so much of an anti-war movie that this story deserves to be told as. So that's my beef.
Agreed.
I've not seen this newer version. I've only played the mobile game with in-app purchases, and they do keep the scene where he goes on leave. It's arguably a more faithful adaptation.
The third Academy Awards, which we are in right now, they saw a major change. One real major change, not a lot outside of that, but the Academy membership, the entirety of it, was now involved in voting for both nominations and the final awards of the eligible films. So, gone were the days of the smoke-filled rooms with the Council of Five determining the award winners. The awards given out in this ceremony went up to 8, adding in sound recording as the only new category. So one more unique element of the ceremony, it was held only 7 months after the prior, making 1930 it was the only calendar year to have 2 Academy Awards ceremonies. This decision was made to present awards closer to their eligibility deadlines. Lastly, an interesting thing about this, a few of the award announcements were filmed for Best Picture, Best Actress, and Best Writing. This is the earliest video record of Oscar acceptances. Now, I heard they're getting rid of them after Adrian Brody, but it was so bad. But outside of that, there really weren't any major updates, but there were A lot of other interesting also-rans for the Outstanding Picture category, so I'll cover those. So they were, first one was called The Big House. This is the first real jailhouse drama about a naive kid going to prison, finds himself falling in with the hardened criminals. They're planning a breakout. Very interesting fact with this one, Frances Marion won Best Writing, and this is the first ever woman to win an Oscar in a non-acting category, which happened way earlier than I would have expected it.
I'm actually very surprised by that.
Yeah. The next is Disraeli. This is a biopic of British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, focusing on him gaining control of the Suez Canal for England, Queen Victoria at the time. The best actor was George Arliss for this movie. He, again, played the titular Benjamin Disraeli, but he had been playing the same role multiple times leading up to the ceremony. He had been in a stage play of this for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Stop it.
As well as an earlier silent film version of the same story, which leads me to...
He was fleabagging it.
He was fleabagging. Well, it leads me to believe there was a vengeful genie or some kind of, like, witch that cursed him. And he's like, you're going to be bound to this until you win the Oscar.
That's crazy.
And I think, crazily at this ceremony, when he received the award, he went up in a puff of smoke. And that's why Best Actor wasn't televised. He was like, I'm free!
Yeah.
And then disappeared into the ether. The next one is The Divorcee. This was the Best Actress winner of the year, Norma Shearer winning that award. She plays a woman whose husband cheats on her. So she, quote, responds to his infidelities in kind. So kind of a girl boss sort of movie.
Yeah.
The last one is The Love Parade. This was a true musical, similar to something like Broadway Melody, but it had a more fantastical plot. A French military man marries the queen of the fictional Sylvania, but he realized that marrying a queen ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Oh, stop.
Apparently, this is a fairly goofy movie. Not an extremely goofy movie, but a fairly goofy movie that nears screwball comedy territory. So it's a really interesting pick against this more serious fare, jail dramas, haughty biopics, divorced women, and of course a World War II very serious movie.
I guess the idea of Oscar bait hadn't really metastasized. Like we don't have the idea of Oscar bait yet, so they are just like, we got movies.
Yeah,
like,
I think then it was it was kind of surprising that it was getting so much Academy love, but it shows they could be subversive even in those days. It broke a record. It became the most nominated movie ever at the time with 6 nominations. The only category it was not nominated in was Best Actress.
Oh.
But it did fail to win a single award.
Wow.
Becoming the first major Oscars shutout.
Wow.
Flop.
Leave it in the past. We don't need to watch this.
I do want to watch more comedies from that era, though.
I think we're going to get into an era of comedies fairly similar.
Comedies have won Best Picture?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, It Happened One Night is coming up. And it's a romantic comedy.
Stop it.
Yeah. But yeah, that what was going on back then. I got a little brain rot. I think I have a fun one for this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, let's pretend. It's hard to say if they were doing a gritty reboot of this movie when they just did a gritty reboot of this movie. Pretend that one didn't exist. But so if they were doing a gritty reboot of this movie in 2026, what would the trailer be like? Specifically, what pop song would they play slowly to set the tone? I have a great one for it, but you guys do.
The Ordinary. You know that song?
Oh.
But like a dark version of Alex Warren's
Ordinary. And I think if it was made today, there would be a lot of like product placement. So we could get like a Cabela's collab. We could get like a Bass Pro Shops collab. We could get...
I think it would be what like military industrial complex collabs, right? Like,
or just like...
It'd be like Booz Allen Hamilton.
Right.
G4S.
Raytheon.
Yeah.
Or like Coca-Cola. And just think that they were just, I'd
Coca-Cola and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I'd just be like putting a bunch of product placements into it and then have Alex Warren's Ordinary in the background.
What scenes would you cut into the trailer to make it like really dramatic?
So definitely the boots would be like a Tim's ad. So it's like slow-mo Tim's.
Like they would just be Tim's.
Yeah.
Like this is like a world where the boots that are given out as rations are just Tim's.
Tim's.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that. I mean, there's a lot of scenes.
Would it be like a cold open on the boots running and then you hear just like ordinary being played slightly off key?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Drew?
I would go with either the song, so you could go with the original 80s song, Toy Soldiers. You know which one I'm talking about?
No, but...
It's like step
I
by
trust
step,
you.
heart to heart, we all fall down like toy soldiers.
Okay.
There's an
Who sings
Eminem
it?
song that also
Oh.
samples that. You could use that as well.
That actually fits.
Which I think Eminem makes perfect sense for this, because every guy that I know enlisted was a hardcore Eminem fan.
What scenes would you say?
What scenes?
Like, what scenes would be cut into this trailer?
Oh, it would be cut into it. It just... You'd have mostly the war, but you'd have like flashes of like them wooing French girls to show the little dichotomy. Well, and you know what they would do is they would do in this new version, in the trailer, they would show the hand with the butterfly.
My gosh, how
They
many
would show
times...
Kaczynski dead.
That would be the cold open of the trailer. Like, he puts him down, and it's like,
He
shouldn't have brought him.
Yeah.
He's dead. Then the song starts.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. Yeah.
My thought was... my first thought was actually the war, what is it good for? But then my second thought was all these things that I've done by the Killers. Specifically,
Wow.
you know, you start with like the piano, just like the ding,
Okay.
ding, and then you got the I got soul, but I'm not a soldier.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that.
Oh,
but imagine that like
no.
slowed down,
I can
minor
see it.
key.
Ugh.
Like I think that's a disgusting idea, but it works.
It works. No, it does. I see the vision.
I want to hear a minor version of that song applied over some war trailer.
Oh, Lord.
That's a
I'm
great
actually
one.
surprised it hasn't happened, to be honest. Well, the best part of it would be taking it even further where people recut it into a romantic comedy trailer.
Yes.
Which is also a great trend. Probably not appropriate for this movie.
He was a
but I think
German
you-
foot soldier. He was a French sniper. This is the story of how they met.
Meet cute. Meet cute on the western
Enemies
front.
to lovers.
Yeah.
Enemies to lovers on the western front.
Enemies to lovers.
That's like that Gorge movie.
I saw that.
Oh, that it was bad. I
was
watched
bad.
it recently. But you know, where they're across the gorge from each other
And she's playing chess and he's
Oh.
playing the drums or something.
Yes.
Y'all are much more willing to watch movies like this than I
Yeah, but you
am.
know who was in that movie? Anya Taylor-Joy.
Anya
Anya
Taylor-Joy.
Taylor-Joy.
Wow. We
Anya
almost- we
Taylor-Joy,
almost
please
went.
be on our podcast.
We
This is our
almost
third
went. We
time
did it.
asking.
Wow.
I didn't even mean for that to happen.
It has to be organic.
That's true.
You know who else is in that movie? Wicked.
No. Oh, one streak's dead. We acknowledged it, and now it's dead. You killed it. You. She carried the concept of us mentioning Wicked on her shoulders for the entire podcast, plopped it down in front of us, and we said, "It's already dead."
There you go. Now we fit it in. Now we fit it in organically.
That's like a meta organic way of putting it in there. Okay, so final rating and verdict. I really respected a lot of like the directing. I think it's great. I love like the story it's written on. I think they adapted it really well. For me, the acting does drag it down a little bit. For it being a deserved winner, I would say definitely so. Not having seen, of course, the other ones, but
Sure.
say it was very deserving. It stands really strongly in its time. A few things hold me back from really enjoying, like loving this in a way, so I'm giving it a 4.
Okay. I'm also going to give it a 4.
I would also give it a light 4. No heart.
Wow. Okay.
Not like because I didn't like it. Just like
Yeah. I thought I would love it more than I did, but I did really enjoy it.
I think
and I really respect it.
I think the thing I like the most about this movie is the story, which is inherently from the book. I
Yeah.
can't give too much credit to the movie for that.
I'd say
but there are
the
some
book
very very like things that I took away from this movie that you would not get from the text that were there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think some of the shots and the boots montage, the depth that they were using, and that opening, the way they tied that in towards the end, that part that they add in, I think was totally like earned.
Yeah, book is well worth a read. It's only about 200 pages, so it's not too... I knocked it out, like I said, in the weekend, but I was kind of like specifically trying to get through it for watching the movie and for the podcast, so I'm sure you guys could take more thoughtful time with it too, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just 4 stars. Would you say that it beats Wings? For me, I think I barely give Wings the edge.
I also barely give Wings the edge.
I think the problem with Wings is like that big middle chunk, but there are things in that middle chunk that I do really enjoy. So yeah, barely Wings. But again, this one is a really good movie.
I think I'd barely give it to All Quiet. Personally.
Okay, I love
Just
it.
barely. Like
That's
I think
good.
they're pretty on par. I think honestly they're very much on the same playing field.
It's a close one for
just,
sure.
It's just a difference in terms of like technologically what you can. It's crazy that only in 2 years there's already that
Totally.
difference, but just like what you can tell with the story. I think Wings is like very interesting and like as an artifact, I think I really enjoyed it, but I'm not gonna go and be like, hey y'all, we got to run back Wings, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I could see myself rewatching All Quiet on the Western Front.
Okay.
That's the only edge I'll really give it.
There you go. Nothing over a 4 so far, which we're only 3 movies in. One of them sucked, so
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty normal. I think that the next one will be interesting. It's our first Western
Okay.
to ever win. Spoiler alert, we're talking about Cimarron next week.
Yeah.
That's a Western?
That's a Western.
I've never seen a Western. We'll see y'all next week.
Yes, as Sarah said, see y'all next week as we journey to Oklahoma for that, as I said, first ever Western to win Best Picture is 1931's Cimarron.